So at some point, this family, because we had a couple of projects and the parents were involved, they brought the girl when she was 20 plus, I don't remember exactly, but an adult already. They brought her to Russia to this international conference. So the whole family, their brother, the mother, and the girl came to Russia, and we had this big conference. And we were sitting at a huge round table, like maybe 100 people, and everyone at some point was talking about their life dreams. And of course no one expected she would start talking, you know, like first of all she couldn't really speak well, and second of all not in this huge group. But she can draw. And she herself got a big piece of paper and she drew, and when we saw what she did, it was literally unbelievable. She drew a house and a family and herself as a mother and 2 children and a car and a garden and I mean, life, which she dreams of, which she cannot verbalize, but it's a normal, regular dream. And when we passed that paper around the circle, and most of them were educators, many were in special ed, and they were mesmerized because they would never think the young woman with a Down syndrome would actually dream her dream the way any other young woman of her age would. Maybe not saying it.
Yeah, I was just going back to your question, Jane, about, so part of my role is, in my job, is basically saying the systems aren't working for this one person.
Mm-hmm.
So I, you know, because the education system, healthcare, all these systems generally meet the needs, the basic needs of people, or meet what their criteria or standards are. But for the 10% on this end and 10% on this end, it doesn't. So you're trying to get a square peg into a round hole. So I love my job because really it's saying, how do we throw out the systems language, system stuff, and say, for this one person, it needs to adjust so that they can get what they need from the system, like anybody else. It's just they're not the same way. So when you say systems are not meant to meet everybody's needs, they're meant for efficiency's sake, like quantity over quality, to meet 80% of the needs or whatever. And it's those 2 outliers that really then are vulnerable and need the extra sort of barriers removed.
No cages.
No
laws.
cages, no, like treat people how they, like give them what they need from the system without making them jump to the hoop and go through the hole, and because that's just not going to work for them. So that's why.
Okay, let's move, right? Lesson 8. I tried to make the font fancy, but I guess it's overly done. I guess it's hard to read. Sorry about that. So what do you think? Only by getting can you give. Only by growing in one's spirit. Come on, Enos. One can collaborate in the development of others. Agreed? Disagreed? Yeah? Okay. Okay. How about these ones?
The same. The first.
Yeah, the first, and then learn how to admit your mistakes. And the bad teachers blame everyone, everything except themselves. We're talking about lessons we learned from. What do you think? How many bad teachers did you meet in life in proportion to good ones? More bad or more good? More good? More good? More bad? Yeah? More good?
More bad.
More bad.
More bad than false.
Okay. Alice?
More good, definitely.
More good. Okay.
Well, like-
So if I say in your life, at the level of secondary education, between say 6 and 18, did you have 5+ good teachers? Yeah? Who had 10+ good teachers? Okay. Who had 3 good teachers but less than 5?
It's somewhat an exception, good teacher, I would say.
It is an exception, yeah?
I mean, everybody has a different.
Yeah, how do you define, Judith? How do you define a good teacher? Because that's the starting point, right?
The ones that I remember, most of them I don't even
Remember.
can
Okay?
now
Uh-huh.
bring them up and remember. The ones that I remember are
2. Okay. Alice?
So I feel like I meet, the most teacher I meet is just like okay teachers. They're
Mhm.
not bad, like they didn't do anything wrong, but they are like not really the person you really want to revisit like after you graduate.
Excellent. So people who you don't want to see after you graduate your school are mediocre. They're not really good teachers, right? Those who are really good, you will gladly meet and talk and share. How many of such you have who you want to deal with after, any time in your life after you are done with the class or school?
I said
2.
I have
5.
I have 6.
Oh, that's great.
Somewhere between 6 and 10. I was extremely fortunate.
Okay,
And
okay.
I realized that and the reason I say they're good is that we knew they loved us.
And how did you know that?
It's a really long time ago. There was something in their eyes. There was something in the way that we all did better than we thought we could do with them. They believed in us.
Okay, so you don't expect a teacher saying all the time, like in the family, I love you, right? No. It's exactly this,
And
the way
challenged-
they look.
They
yeah?
challenged us,
Uh-huh.
and then they sat back and let us get on with it.
There's a great educator who wrote an article, I wish it were translated into English. It's about different types of teachers. And he's talking about good, mediocre, and very bad. And he brings up character features of real good teachers. And he's debating the idea whether a good teacher should never raise his or her voice, or curse, or use real French, not the French, but a different French.
One of my favorite teachers threw a piece of chalk at a boy.
And you still love that
I love
teacher.
that teacher.
Yeah, so why would you forgive a teacher who would, that's exactly the case which is described in this article. Why would you still appreciate and love this teacher, although it's kind of unacceptable?
Yeah.
Imagine I would start, throwing.
I think we all recognize
And then we
that
talked
this.
with us.
Yeah,
We all,
chocolate.
yeah, we all recognize that the child was struggling, and I think we all knew also that the teacher loved all of us, even the child that he threw the chalk at, and he was at wit's end, and the child was disrupting the entire class always. And I think they did come to some sort of, they I think that's even with like a parent relationship. You can have this conflict, but you need to come back together and resolve it or talk about it. And I think it was, yeah, I don't know.
So this educator is talking about one teacher who he considers the writer, considers among the best. And he says this teacher would allow himself shout like crazy, call students idiots. He was a math teacher, and when students would not understand something, he would easily call them dumbheads, idiots, etc. But when the kids understood it, and he's there, and he realizes he's so loving and happy that it happened, that they realized it was so genuine. He really wanted them to get it. So they would forgive cursing, bad behavior, jerk, and anything. By the way, I didn't tell you this, but now that we came to this, remember Sukhomlinsky, I mentioned several times, that's what he did. That's what he did. When children misbehaved, he would throw chalk. And they said he was very good, so it would go straight into the forehead. If the kid didn't manage to jump.
Those teachers are passionate. And I think
That's
that's like, those were the
excellent.
ones
Yeah.
that I went back to visit, the ones
Yeah.
that I still remember the name of my
Yeah.
grade 4 teacher. You don't want to know how long ago that was.
I also remember, yeah.
He was
And
my
they-
grade 4
yeah,
teacher too.
Yeah, they were passionate. And I say that I've also had teachers who weren't just bad, they were abusive.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, yeah. So, going back to the concept of a good teacher, does it really matter whether the teacher is mostly women, let's talk about, does it matter whether she looks really beautiful? No. Does it matter whether she is old or young? No. How long?
everybody's old when you're a child.
How long does it take? Yeah, we're all old, yeah, with children, that's true. But a little fewer wrinkles. So how long does it take for children to meet and be happy with someone who is young, beautiful, attractive, and then recognize something is wrong and stop loving? How long do you think it takes?
Half an hour.
So it happens, right? So children much smarter than we are, right? Because when we see a pretty face or just real good package, everything looks beautiful, it might take more than half an hour to recognize.
They feel.
No, I'm talking about adults, not
Also
children,
adults,
yeah.
Absolutely. You can keep it forever, like
Yeah.
you never really realize.
So children, here's the proof, children are smarter than we are. Because they go deeper, they can read the emotions, right? Okay,
I just feel very
yeah.
uncomfortable with this discussion about like, if, I think, there's a difference between a teacher being passionate and maybe throwing a piece of chalk now and then to someone calling someone an idiot all the time. I think there's a very fun, there's a
No,
really
Sarah, I
fun
never
line.
said all the time. All the time is definitely not allowed. But when you're...
I don't want to
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
that like a teacher, oh, they're just passionate and, they put these kids down because they'll praise them. I don't
You don't
agree
buy
with
it.
that.
Okay.
I think like if someone is, a passionate teacher, you can express that in a positive way and
Okay.
create a nurturing and safe environment. I don't think you need to use negative pedagogy to do that or negative reinforcement. I definitely have had teachers that have, thrown a piece of chalk and that's okay.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I think, I'm not saying that you have to be perfect all
Oh,
the
it
time.
feels like in
I
Canada
just
it's a
wanna-
regular thing,
But I
yeah.
just want to say, I don't want to leave this discussion excusing teachers teacher's bad behavior because they're passionate, I don't want to leave with that sentence.
No, Sarah, it's excellent you raised this point. Thank you for that. Any ideas in response?
I also think that some teachers are great for some kids, and some teachers are not great for kids in that same room. So there's like that individuality of the child themselves, because I can think of teachers who are really connected with were horrible teachers, but they were great people, and so it created a sense of like safety when it comes.
Excellent point, excellent.
Absolutely, I don't think it's ever okay to like, you know, that the negative attention for some kids, because I work with the outliers,
Yeah.
is the only kind of attention they know and recognize. And so positive attention feels so uncomfortable to them. And I'm not like saying you should give negative attention in any way. I think for each child, the acknowledgement can be different. So even though you may have a very caring teacher who's also a great teacher, for that child, there's a disconnect because whatever reason, maybe there's instability elsewhere or whichever. I think what poor Chuck would have said is positive regard for every child, regardless, but we are human, and children will recognize that adults are human too. They're not one-dimensional, they're not just the teacher, they're not just.
And they will forgive, but if it's not.
I want to be clear, like, you know, children will forgive, children are resilient, but they are affected by trauma. And those are my patients as well. And sometimes school is the only positive interaction they have with an adult, so it's not excusable to feed into that negative reinforcement. This might be the only opportunity in their entire day where they can have a positive relationship with an adult and then learn that their good efforts will get reinforced positively and not only receive negative attention.
Sarah,
we need to-
I hear you. I think what we're talking about is slightly different. We're talking about here's a child, and the teacher is trying all sorts of ways. And the teacher feels so emotional about the subject and the necessity and the disability at the moment that on the teacher's part to actually teach that he or she does it, although the teacher feels shamed by doing it, and the teacher might apologize right away. And we're not saying it's okay, but we're saying that rather than being indifferent, quiet, and not showing emotions, I would rather take a person who has emotions. I mean,
There's two things I would like to mention. First of all, we are regulated by the TRB, so we have standards,
sure.
and we are not allowed to actually
Yeah,
teach this child. But I would like to go back to what you said, and actually I appreciate what you're saying, because there's a case of one teacher in my school who's passionate and she loves what she does, except that sometimes she doesn't realize it, but she's being abusive in some ways, and then she would be very rewarding, and kids feel very uncomfortable because they don't know where to stand, and it creates a very, very bad feeling for the child, and it's unfair because I feel like the child is being used, and it has consequences because now she's losing students because they don't know how to deal with that person, and they know she's passionate and they will talk about it, but that doesn't work. Not with children's
I
feelings.
agree, like they need like consistency. So if you're gonna discipline consistently with anticipated consequences, that makes sense within that structure. But if you're passionate one moment and then calling someone an idiot another moment, that is like a very good setup for an abusive relationship where you are inconsistent with your negative and positive, and that is very destructive. Like that's sort of that.
are there any circumstances where this could still not be extremely bad for children? Like what is built within this classroom and in in which situation this will be forgiven or will be understood.
I think name calling is abusive and is never acceptable under any circumstance.
Yes.
And is not, for me, is not passion. This happened probably 30 years ago. I once in a class, and they're young adults, not children, like older teens, young 20s. I got so frustrated with a student who I thought was really talented and was just mucking around that I took a script that I was holding and I threw it across the room, not at him, past him. I mean, even if I'd thrown it at him, I wouldn't have hit him, but I didn't. But I just was so frustrated I did that, and I was so horrified. I still get chills when I remember it. It was one of the worst moments in my life, and I did apologize right away, and it became a moment for everybody to, we talked about frustration. It went somewhere, but in that moment, it was all about me, and it wasn't really about the student. And like that's for me is what I absolutely believe in, and what is so difficult to do, to stay focused on a child, a student, or just. But name calling is, I don't care. It's like impact is way more important than anything else.
So I really appreciate that story because I think what happened was that you owned what happened. So it's not about, oh, the child will forgive you. It's like, no, it's up to me to fix that relationship and repair it. And I think that's where the responsibility should be. This shouldn't be a discussion on, oh, the child will forgive you. It's okay if you're passionate. It's like, I understand that I'm human. I'm going to own my mistake because I'm the adult. I am the power in the room.
Yes, Sarah, but we're talking about children, and we're trying to understand how children will be impacted, what is for them, how in situations like this, what's happening. That's what we're trying to do. It's absolutely clearly not allowed. There are certain standards and of course, and regulations. And of course, teachers are not allowed to be rude. No one discusses that. We're talking about human beings as teachers who, as human beings, have different emotions in life. So what's happening then if they allow themselves these emotions? If we let each teacher out of the school right away because that happened, we won't have enough teachers. So what happens next? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, am I right or not? Or how do you perceive it?
I think that's what with the story about the chalk that I was trying to say, is that it wasn't okay, but that they came together after. So I think in all relationships, I'm not saying that it was okay, we were all shocked by it, and this child was a child that needed extra love and attention. His father was in jail, like there was lots of issues with this child that were a lot more intense than any of the other children in the room. That child needed more love and more positive attention than probably all of us, the other kids in the room. But they did come together after. And I think in a lot of relationships you have this conflict, but like you did, you came back with that student and you try to repair it and you owned it. And I think that was maybe what you're getting at, is that needs to happen. And I agree, I don't think it's okay.
I just appreciate this discussion because I felt like we were leaving this discussion having just said, oh, like a teacher threw a piece of chalk at someone and they were my favorite teacher ever. Or this person wrote an article about how he was abusive and like called everyone names and oh, by the way, he was just a passionate teacher.
No, Sarah.
Can I just finish my
sure,
thought?
go ahead.
So I felt like that's how we were leaving this discussion without context. So I really appreciate being able to put that context and be like, okay, we actually don't think that that's a good thing, but we understand that people are human and now let's move on.
And I guess that's the risk of like when Dr. Julien talked about not being dispassionate, not being objective. The risk is that if I really love these kids and if I really share my passion, whatever, I'll lose it at some moment. That's the risk, because if I'm just always like this, I'm never going to hurt anybody. I also may never impact anybody.
Because love is
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah, and if I'm taking that risk, I have to be prepared to own it. And in theory, I guess, take the risk of losing face, except what we're all saying is that that's the exact opposite happens, right? Only more people around the world than you.
Claire, I think how I see it is that there's some value to connecting with children from an authentic, genuine human place. And I agree that that should be in a safe, healthy way for the child.
Sure.
Is that what we're talking about?
Of course, yeah. What,
That
I
being
think,
real with someone there is value to that.
yeah.
And it's also a risk in some way.
Yeah, well, in nursing, we're taught to not do that. We're taught to be very objective
And
to
keep a distance.
And the best, like, I would say clinical relationships that I've had is when I said, I'm not gonna listen to my textbook, I'm not listening to my nursing supervisors in this situation, and I'm gonna do what I feel is right, because I'm not, this is not working. Everything that I've been taught is not working, and I just was a human being, and that was the best thing that I could do. So, but yeah, we're not taught to do that. We're not encouraged to do that, and if, my manager or supervisor found out about something, I would probably get in trouble for that. But I know in that situation, that was the appropriate thing to do. But it's hard because you also, you really can't do that in each circumstance.
And you become very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the problem with passion and emotions is when you allow yourself emotions, there's a huge spectrum. And as in any family, there are different emotions. It doesn't mean people don't love one another, but they allow themselves different emotions. Is it okay? No. Negative emotions are not okay. Never. But the thing is, if we keep the distance as educators with children or medical professionals with patients, we're losing. We're losing. Because when you sit at the ultrasound, well, you lay on the ultrasound table, right? And they do ultrasound, the technician. And the technician sits with the face, which is a mask, literally, no emotions. And you suspect you have something bad. And you keep asking the technician, what is, I'm not allowed to tell you, says the technician. But please, at least is it good? I'm not allowed to tell. And that's what you see. The mask, I understand there's a protocol, and the person behaves exactly as he or she was taught to behave, right? And then you wait for a week to receive the result, the description. How does that feel? It's totally, no emotions, no nothing. It just, the person does his job and does it 100%. Are you happy with that? No. That's what I'm saying. It's not about negative or positive emotions. It's very difficult in human relations to remain dispassionate. And when we're talking about kids and behavior, we all understand there are no ideal kids. But when the atmosphere in the classroom is trust and respect and love, I think that a teacher can raise his or her voice. I'm not saying idiot, this is not acceptable, clearly. But showing emotions that something was explained 100 times and you don't get it, kids, let's do it again. It's human. If they don't learn that we're all human, we're missing something. And worship was human. He allowed himself, by the way, even spanking.
I think it's, part of it is, the one I struggle with the most, same is similar to you, is everyone wants us to be, quote unquote, professional.
Neutral.
No, professional. That's the word they use.
Yeah.
We're professional. As a nurse, we're professionals. As doctors, we're professionals. As teachers, we have to be professional in our dealing.
Uh-huh.
But I find that in some people's definition of professional, they take away the humanity and want to make us all machines because we offer a service and we're part of this, a little bit of a, the customer-client type of relationship where, I'm here to provide a service and that's all I do. I'm not human. I can be replaced with a robot. Is somehow how some people interpret that professionalism. And so I find sometimes that professionalism does build barriers that inhibit good delivery of what you're supposed to do, whether you're medical or educational. Like even in our end of year staff meeting in a high school, we were trying to look at our staff handbook and just see what we needed to change. And one teacher was just like, no, we have to be professional. We should never give our cell phones out to kids, ever. They should never have it. And part of me, as part of running a lot of clubs, being with a lot of teams, I'm like, well, I get that because in her perspective, it was, we need to protect ourselves, right? We need to protect ourselves, we need to protect ourselves as teachers. But I think being in a human service profession, not being
Which is
so...
called helping
Yeah.
professions,
Yeah.
by the way.
It's like being so risk averse, being so protective really inhibits what you're meant to do. I grew up in the Philippines. Our teachers were a lot more personable and a lot more personal. They were professionals, but we've been called a class of idiots one time because we deserved it. There was something that happened, and it was like you're like, I remember being called the first grade idiot in front of all the other idiots, but we needed it at that
At
point.
least you were graded the best.
Right. Yeah, I was. But part of me is like, no, that being called an idiot at that moment, we had a relationship, we had context. And for me, I accepted it as a rebuke, not because I thought, oh my goodness, I'm an idiot. Or like, I don't think it brought down our self-image or self-worth. But it was a very
Cool show.
efficient, effective, like reality check on us. And we understood where the teacher was coming from. We had that relationship. But sometimes with the professionalism, you do lose that relationship. So that when a teacher does call you like an idiot or something, because, I don't know, not that I call my kids idiot all the time. I do it in kind of like in, as a teacher, with high schoolers, I do it as a sort of a joke sometimes. Like I call myself an idiot in front of them. When they do something like a little bit idiotic there, but but we have that relationship already set. This is not the most professional. And if you were to take it again out of context, it would look like it was super bad, but unacceptable. But with that context, it's I don't know, that's the thing that I struggle with the most, is people tell me, well, you have to be professional, you have to be this, you have to be that. But at the same time, I find that takes out the humanity of the relationship. And it's true, I forgot who said it either, one of you ladies said it, that, I could be a great teacher to one, I think it was Bronwyn who said it, I could be a great teacher to one person and be the worst teacher for another, and that is totally true, right? And again, me as the adult knowing that, having that context, I take my risk, but I also take my responsibilities, right? There are the responsibilities like you guys shown, you threw the chalk, it was wrong, you threw something, it was wrong, you own up. And I think it's just part of humanity, not even just being an adult. Even when kids do it, they should be taking the responsibility, and maybe no one has modeled that enough for them to take that responsibility. Instead, they're all like, well, it's not my fault.
Okay.
You were being an idiot. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you guys are saying.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to say, I'm not trying to say put up professional boundaries. I'm trying to say
Oh,
like.
and I wasn't implying that you were
No,
going
I
against.
didn't think you were, but I just, like, what I don't wanna leave is like, oh, the children are forgiving and they will always forgive you. It's like, no, we're the adults, we have the power here, we have to self-regulate our emotions. Negative emotions are okay, everybody feels them. We've developed to have those emotions, and that's totally fine. But if you cross that boundary, if you have a good intention behind it, if it's in service of the person that you're helping and it's not for you, like some people cross boundaries in service of that youth, but some people cross boundaries because they need that support. That's wrong. But if they're crossing that boundary in service of that youth, I think that's totally fine, but you own it. You own that, and I don't think it's up to that child or that youth to forgive you. Like, that capacity is not unlimited, and
Yeah.
they will be affected by trauma. And that's all I wanted to say, is that don't think that they are an all existing like rubber band that will never stop. Like, they will be affected by trauma. That's all I wanted to say. And
No, Sarah, we don't keep you as devil's advocate for sure, no. No, and it was actually good to bring for the discussion, definitely. And of course, the teacher I was talking about in that article, he's describing, of course it's not happening all the time. And of course the teacher apologized afterwards. But why kids forgive? Because the intent is to help them. And that's about humanity. It's about our profession, which is full of emotions. And ideally, it would be great if teachers do not allow themselves. It would be great, but if to be realistic, it happens. It's not forgivable, but what is even more unforgivable for me is when teachers are absolutely indifferent. Come to work, as you say, as robots, do what they're supposed to do, give a lesson, leave. Whatever kids get or not get, they work as cold professionals. I guess probably the key word for me is cold. And kids feel it right away. That is the barrier which happens immediately. Okay, let's move on. Observations.
We didn't deal with the questions. What, go to the previous slide?
I thought, no?
Yes.
Oh, no, we didn't, sorry. Yeah,
It's so great.
yeah. The question is much more important than the answer. I don't remember who said this, but somebody very smart said that whenever he presents, he expects a good question. And when there's a good question, that makes a difference. If there's no good question, this is it. When kids ask questions, remember I told you about that bad teacher who, whenever the kid would raise their hand, like, here's the corner, go. So when the teacher does not welcome a question, that's a sign, right away, right there, bad teacher. Because questions of kids, it's a symptom of many, many things. What would you say what? Curiosity, what else?
Critical thinking.
Interest.
Engagement.
Attention, yeah, at least listen to me, yeah, as a teacher.
Clarification.
Yeah, clarification. And if the kid stands up and says, you know what, it's all wrong what you said, let me tell you, how would you react?
I was that kid.
Can you explain?
You was.
Oh, I was that kid.
So how did it happen?
How did teachers react to me? Well, that's when I got a shoe thrown at me once.
Okay.
But also, it really depended on.
Was it a nice shoe or just?
No, that's what really, my parents then took me out of school.
Okay.
But it it really, it depended on the teacher and it depended on the situation, like,
How did you feel as a child asking questions?
very defiant. And part of my asking questions was to be provocative,
Oh,
to
okay.
purposely
Okay.
be provocative.
Revolutionary in the class.
I mean, attention seeker,
Okay.
people can label it in different ways and it probably every
No,
day to
how
day
did
had
you
different ways.
feel?
There were days where I felt like it was absolutely because I knew other people had the same question
Oh, and no one
and
did?
nobody was asking, or there were some days where it was like, I totally disagree with you and I'm gonna ask a question that indicates I disagree with you.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had children ask me questions when they disagree with me, and then I just listen to them, and I'm like, yeah, that's wrong. And you're 4 years old, and you know that this is not a dinosaur, or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I think you just have to listen.
And they love explaining.
Yeah.
They love it when adults say, you know,
what do you think?
yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
But at the same time, you
Yeah.
can also learn that there's different perspective and there's no right or wrong, but different ways of thinking for some answers. So you can tell them, okay, can you explain me why you think that's
Sure,
wrong?
sure, of course.
And then you give your answer and somebody else will give another answer and then that's a discussion.
For sure.
Okay.
I truly thought I had better ideas.
I think it's one of the most important life skills that we all need to learn.
Asking questions.
And if you are lucky enough to be with somebody who seriously answers your question or asks you more questions or is excited that you're asking questions, then you go into life expecting that it's okay to ask questions. And if they get shut down early enough, I know so many adults who just are terrified to ask questions. And that's really, that's not good for us, it's not healthy.
I think somebody told me once, don't ask a question if you don't know what the answer is going to be. And I was just like, what? Yeah, like, it seems totally counterintuitive, but it's almost like a politician kind of response, right? Like, don't ask a question unless you know what you want the response to be. And I was like,
Then
what's the
why
whole
ask?
point of asking
Yeah.
a question?
Well, that's what I found, like, in graduate school, a lot of times people don't want to ask questions because it makes them look stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm always that person that's asking questions, and I don't care if I look stupid, because, like, that's just,
What's the definition of stupid?
well, but I think that's what people learn growing up, is that if they ask questions, that means that they don't know, which means then that they're stupid. But for me, I've just always been really curious, or who knows why, but for me, and like, it continued into my adult life, that I continue to ask questions. But even still in graduate school, I know that sometimes it has made me look stupid in front of my peers, but,
As opposed to curious.
yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, you can think I'm stupid, and I'm gonna just continue to
Did
go.
someone call you stupid or you just?
I have felt stupid a lot in my graduate studies, yeah. My master's degree and my doctoral degree. But I think like I'm confident enough to be like, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room, ever. That's never my like, and I don't care to be the smartest person in the room. I care to think critically about things and so that's where I come from.
One of the best teachers I ever had was the person who said there's no such thing as a stupid question. And who said the exact opposite of what you said. Only ask the questions that you don't know the answer to. And that was such a liberation. And I was an adult already before somebody said it.
Okay,
So this-
teacher's observations. What do you think? What do you think?
I think there should be more than one teacher in a room. That way you can always, because being a teacher is actually it can be isolating because you have your own little kingdom, right? You have your classroom, and depending on what your school environment is and your school culture is, you can be, you can live in that little kingdom by yourself for the next, like,
Does it also develop kind of feeling that you have more and more power? Like with years of being a teacher? And that's scary, that's kind of dangerous, because if you develop this in yourself, yeah?
Well, it's like continuing education for any profession. We always learn more as time passes and gather more knowledge, so, I mean, I can think of doctors who need to go back to school and like judges.
Yeah, Claire.
This speaks to like collaboration to me, like just from a medical perspective, just how collaborative practice, and not just within like interdisciplinary like medical professions, but with community members, with schools, with ECE, with everyone, basically enriches the care that we can offer to our patients, to our kids, to our families, and to our communities in terms of development.
I'm sure you are aware of Finnish school system, which is one of the best in the world. Are you? No? So in Finland, because of the PISA, results of tests and everything, so there are many research-based papers and books written about Finland and about the Finnish school system by people who are inside and people who are outside. And one of the features which they have, that's why I started talking about it, teachers are working within the school building on a very collaborative level. So when this, like something happened during the class, the kid didn't understand or misbehaved, the teacher brings it to the teacher's room openly, and then teachers who work with the same class, with the same group of kids, they get together, they discuss as a group, and they get an answer easier. Plus, no one hides, no one keeps it to oneself, because this could be really dangerous. If I have a problem with this kid, I'll solve it myself. But maybe something bigger than just within this class. And there's one more thing which I couldn't digest for quite a while. Special education, and all of you who are teachers and non-teachers know what it is, right? When kids have any kinds of mental or physical disabilities, then special education. And hardly any parent would love a child being called a child with special needs or working with special educator, because it's kind of, in a way, a label. So what's happening in Finland, they consider, in theory and practice, that every kid needs to go through a short program of special education at some point during the secondary education period, because no one is within the norm, and medical professionals will know it better, right? There's nothing like absolute norm. It doesn't exist in the world. It's a theoretical construct.
They try.
But it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll finish in a second. So what they do, at some point, they bring this or that student in the class, in the school building, to a special ed program for a couple of months or half a year or shorter or longer, and then put this kid back into the regular class. And they consider it's a huge benefit for every child. It's not considered kind of negative. Yeah.
Actually, because we talked a lot about that in my school, and we know that kids who are special needs don't want to be labeled special needs, and they don't want to be different from the others. So what the special ed teachers said, if we can be flexible, we should be flexible with everybody, so everybody can benefit from the flexibility, instead of just saying, this is just for that child. So if it's not hurting the outcome of the curriculum, why not be flexible with everybody?
Okay, okay. I hate rushing you, but we still have a movie. The purpose of research should not serve any interest except that of the child, who should be treated as a unique human being. I guess nothing to discuss.
Nothing
Yeah?
about us without.
All
us.
in agreement, yeah. And he is about doctors and teachers, which I love because I think these are two professions which should always be together for the physical and emotional health of children and overall health. Yeah,
Last post.
yeah, the last.
Yeah.
And to add to this last part, I was recently at a lecture with a guy from Nigeria, and he mentioned the statistics that killed me. He said every day in Nigeria, 200 women give birth without any support under a tree. Literally having seasons in their mind. So, how many of them die? How many babies don't live until the first month? 200 women. So, and this is happening in 2019. And what Sam was talking about yesterday, the guy from Rwanda, remember? When I asked him about his message, yeah, you guys are lucky. And that is always in perspective, always in comparison. That was very helpful for me, frankly.
It's
Okay.
okay that he was like lucky in many ways too.
Yeah, yeah,
The fact
of course.
that from the genocide to then being in a community where those racial stereotypes
And a family spirit.
yeah,
Which was
could
great.
overcome,
Yeah.
like, I still am trying to understand how that can happen within a decade after such atrocity. How does that, because we're not seeing that in Canada, you know, we're continuing to see racism and discrimination and so how's that happened? And he just said, well, the government's really supporting that. Well,
Yeah.
how, to me, I'm just like, I just want to talk to him more about that, like how, and I guess I'm just kind of in disbelief, like how can,
You know, the explanation for me comes from a difference in culture. It's a very community-oriented culture, and women who are used to having big families and who lost all their children, they are deprived of the most sacred thing, love of the mother, and they're ready, happily ready to give it to other kids. And because of it, this love is unconditional, without boundaries, and because of it, even with 16 children, and I'm sure not many funds available, and I'm sure the conditions are not really good, but they still create this atmosphere of love and safety.
but you would
You're
think
talking about
that,
tribalism, right?
yeah, like
Yeah,
within
yeah.
16
Yeah.
kids, if you recognize your child in another child, then would you not,
I
do
don't.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
like
of course,
how,
of
to
course,
me, that is
yeah.
such an amazing, like,
It is,
I want to
it
hear more
is.
about that. Like how has
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I wonder how long that period of maybe being.
He was talking about 10 years.
He was-
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was
I
born a
wonder
year
if,
after the
like,
genocide.
20 years from now, if people will forget all the atrocities.
but how can you forget?
No,
Like,
no, you
we're
can't
still
forget.
talking
No,
about
no,
the
of course.
Holocaust. It's
No,
still-
no, absolutely not. You can't forget, no. But
Next generation, they are not really.
I don't think they can forget. Plus, each family has somebody or many somebodies who are gone because of that. I don't think it's possible to forget. But I also think that, I don't know much about Rwanda, I'm speculating. I'm just thinking that maybe the government is making every effort to like move on because it's, again, it's in the human nature to move on and just build on whatever foundation is there, you know?
There's a lot of evidence to show, like, just moving on without reconciliation doesn't work. If you look at, you know, racial tensions in the United States, people think, oh, civil rights movement happened, let's just move on, and that obviously doesn't.
No, we're talking about Rwanda genocide. We had a student yesterday who was talking. He's from Rwanda.
He did talk about the reconciliation, like that was the cornerstone of government policy, but I'm just wondering, like, how is that actually actualized? Like, how are they doing that, and then how is that affecting, so he was in this home, and they had all the different, they call them tribal groups, and they were all, they were like brothers and sisters, and they were treated with respect and love, and all these like, colonial imposed, I don't know if you want to call them stereotypes or whatever, that helped sort of create the genocide, were then sort of, he seemed to not be there. And just to me, I'm like, how do, I want to hear more about that. To me, that's amazing, if that's true.
I mean,
Yeah, because I've had students from Rwanda in my schools, and we had talked about to them about that. And one of the things about the reconciliation, they took the way they did it in South Africa after the apartheid, where people would tell their story and without judgment. So whether you were a perpetrator or a victim, it doesn't matter. You have to tell your story. And they used a bit of that aspect of healing somehow. But the notion of family, for example, a lot of students came without their parents, but they lived within the family. There was somebody, so an aunt or an uncle or even a friend that became mother and father. And the community, the family is very strong. And in many students they call each other brothers, sisters, but actually they are not by blood. But for them, they are brothers and sisters. And they have one mother and one father, or two mothers, two fathers. And that's how they rebuild themselves.
so the community becomes this foundation on which they recreate themselves. And but you are totally right, it's extremely difficult. And in South Africa, of course, Mandela was the one who said, let's forgive, right? So it came from the person who was such a champion of peace, who was so much respected by everyone. I don't know about Rwanda government.
Well, Rwanda, the thing is, Romeo Dallaire was the only one actually in Canada who did something, and he actually told the people from Rwanda, he said, Canada doesn't care, and that's true, Canada didn't care. They didn't do much for them, and because it was horrible what happened. I had students actually who told me that they fled at night by foot. They left the country by foot to go to a camp because they did not know where their parents were. They were arrested and they had no idea. So it was just horrible what happened. But I feel that the whole Africa was colonized. Only two countries were never colonized. Everything was colonized. So in these countries, family is very strong. I know that in Algeria, where my parents are from, family, like when there's a wedding, when there's a death, everybody gathers, everybody's around. Like it's very strong, not like in Western culture where everybody's me and myself.
I think it also, there's a piece around the demographics or the composition of a particular community as well. Like Sweden is used to be very homogeneous in ethnic background as well as sort of religious background. So the more homogeneous, the more commonality there is, the less diversity, and then the less conflict. So they were able to push through really progressive laws because people generally agreed that that was what they wanted for their community. Canada, as a very multicultural and diverse place, then has to balance out different values and different priorities of different groups. so there's a lot more to consider. And so there's less of a, we're gonna solve it this way. Because if you pick one way of doing it, there's still those 20, 30, whatever outliers that don't, and are still not having that reconciliation for them. So I don't think that's the one answer, but I think it does, because I used to think about these things too, like how does this society or community able to do this so successfully, or Japan, or, and it really does have something to do with the composition of the community, and the more commonality they have, the less, not that it's better, I don't think that diversity brings a lot of benefits to it. In no way am I saying it's better, it's just, I think, a simpler or maybe faster way of doing something. I mean, just thoughts as we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a concept which is called, the principle in education, which is called culture adaptation. And whenever we bring, and we tend doing it all the time, everywhere in the world, we bring innovations like they work in Finland or they work in Singapore, and we bring them to a totally different system. And we're surprised it doesn't work, because it won't. Because you need cultural adaptation. Remember we were talking yesterday about authorial schools, and we were talking about cultural translation. That's what it means. You need to translate into this culture, and it could be that this particular culture will not accept it. And you can't do something which works great in another culture. Like Starbucks, invented in Seattle, is considered like best coffee. Everyone is crazy about Starbucks. And when my French friends come visit with us, they say, that brown water, you call it coffee?
Yeah.
Really?
Actually, I don't like Starbucks.
I don't either, but, you know.
Italians don't like me, their parents.
So that's what I'm saying. That's a simplified example of cultural adaptation of everything, practically. Okay, we're almost there. I wanted you to read it one more time because it's so important, and it's kind of a conclusion for any profession. We cannot become specialists overnight, and I can tell you from many, many nights of my professional life, you cannot become a professional with many, many nights thinking about it. It's a never-ending process. You always learn. You always learn. And I'm really very, very appreciative to each and everyone that you raised all your questions, and we had all these conversations during these 2 weeks, which enriched me tremendously.